The last prophetic emphasis to young adults I will highlight relates to taking charge of your testimony. If you want to follow the prophet, watch for what he repeats, paying careful attention when he uses terms like, "I plead with you." In his General Conference address entitled "Overcome the World and Find Rest," President Nelson stated, "I extend to members of the entire church the same charge I gave to our young adults last May. I urged them then, and I plead with you now, to take charge of your own testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ." Let us listen to that same charge as it was given to young adults in his talk, Choices for Eternity.
I plead with you to take charge of your testimony, work for it, own it, care for it, nurture it so that it will grow. Feed it truth. Don't pollute it with the false philosophies of unbelieving men and women, and then wonder why your testimony is waning.
Taking charge of your testimony means that we encourage young adults to faithfully address their questions. A pattern for answering questions is outlined in the S&I Doctrinal Mastery resource page entitled Acquiring Spiritual Knowledge. Elder Lawrence E. Corbridge discussed this topic, citing the difference between primary and secondary questions. Primary questions are at the core of a testimony. They include knowing God, knowing that He is our Father, Jesus is the Christ, and the Book of Mormon is true. Secondary questions include questions about the details of church history, polygamy, and priesthood authority. Secondary questions can and should be answered, but they are unending, and they rarely lead to a testimony without conviction in primary questions first. Elder Robert S. Wood shared his own path of anchoring on answers to primary questions as he worked through secondary questions. In a devotional given to BYU Idaho students, Elder Wood described staying up all night, reading the Book of Mormon, and gaining his first clear witness of its truthfulness while he was still in high school. The next week, a friend from school told him he had evidence the Book of Mormon was not true, claiming a long list of anachronisms in the book. Elder Wood told his friend, "You're too late. I already have a testimony." In other words, he already had an answer to a primary question, but he offered to take the list and work through the questions. Some of them were resolved immediately, and others took time. In the meantime, Elder Woods served in the church, was married in the temple, earned his education, raised his family in the gospel. And it wasn't until a few years after his eventual call as a general authority that the last anachronism on that list was resolved by a professor, interestingly, at Cornell University, who was not a member of our faith. Can you imagine if Elder Wood had waited to answer every secondary question before he moved forward with faith in his primary questions? President Nelson explained to our young adults how to address their questions.
If you have questions, and I hope you do, seek answers with a fervent desire to believe. Learn all you can about the gospel, and be sure to turn to truth-filled sources for guidance. We live in the dispensation when nothing shall be withheld. Thus, in time, the Lord will answer all our questions.